You're watching PEGRI TV, Rhode Island's public access channel.
Good afternoon and welcome to a new show, Higher Ground. I have a couple of colleagues here that will be talking about some things, the meaning of that. We're going to listen to a little bit of music as well, specific to Higher Ground, and see where our conversation takes us. So if wouldn't mind, I'm going to listen to a little bit of this song. Thank you. So just listening to a little bit of this song, and that being the name of our show, Higher Ground, what do you think, what does that mean to you?
What does that mean to me? First of all, it brings me right back to Stevie Wonder years.
There he is.
How much I loved him and still do. Higher Ground is just evocative of inspiring daily living for everyone who crosses our path, but most particularly for the young, that we give them a chance to have aspirations and dreams despite the negativity that seems to prevail our world right now, that there are still beautiful things that are occurring, and we want to make sure that children have a chance to grab those opportunities and have them happen for them and not to give up, despite particularly in the wake of Las Vegas. I think that we're all feeling that, but to give children the opportunities to have a pure, healthy, loving life. So when I hear that, that's what I think, because I thought those things when I was a young person, and Stevie Wonder first, and I still haven't let go of that. And I think of Anne Frank, who said, despite everything, as she's being led off to the concentration camp, one of her last entries is, despite everything, I still believe in the goodness of man. So I want to say that for children, don't give up. And there is a higher ground, and it's within each human being. And that's what we try to, we know that. We've tried to let the child find that, direct them to their best selves.
That's for sure. We're going to come back to a part of that, but wanted to ask John, what do you feel, or what comes to mind when you think about Higher Ground?
A feeling of, again, of Stevie Wonder. And having grown up in Providence and Pawtucket since 1969, we listened to Stevie Wonder in Hope High School, and the sense of the black and white of me and you and divisiveness melted away in the presence of such inspiring music. Somehow we felt we could take care of each other as a community.
What a great catalyst, huh?
Yeah, I think so. And how to recognize what higher ground is. What are the elements? What is it that youth are looking for in themselves or in their community? As adults, we have a responsibility to demonstrate that we have an understanding of what it is to be healthy, to know what it is to be able to stand our ground, and whether the water is rising or receding, to recognize what the conditions of our life are right now, and that's it.
And that's interesting, because it's from perspective we're all professionals in the mental health field, how we're viewing some of this, but as you know, depending on what the circumstances are, there'll be that first visit where we'll talk about, so what's going on. But somewhere in there, whether it's that first visit or the next, is so goals. Is there a goal that you want to achieve, or are there goals? And to try to tie that into, how does that relate to Higher Ground? So kind of a question for all of us, but I know we may not look at it that way necessarily, but in a sense that's what we're doing, right? Even establishing, talking about those goals. And by attaining those, are we not getting to that higher level as an individual, right? Whoever that, our clients, if you would.
True.
Just the word client is something that, a word that I don't like using lightly. You know, I'd like to say that the people, the children, the families that I work with are my friends, or members of the human family. That we're all experiencing this human condition together, but because we are professionals, the idea that we are in care of something that's pretty complicated at that point once
That's
we say
true.
client. Yeah.
And I think you're right, when you use that word client, it almost feels like you're setting up a hierarchy, that you have all the answers. And I think the most important thing for children of all ages to know is that, in fact, we don't have the answers. The answers lie within each of us, and each of our lives are mysteries that evolve and unfold. And I think when you are authentic with children and let them know that you don't have all the answers, but you're willing to search for them with them, you create a relationship, and a bond is forged for trust. Trusting themselves, because I think so many people just don't really know to trust themselves to make the right decisions. And I think, I love that you said that, because, you know, as professionals you can't say that you're our friend, but I do believe that we are obligated to be on that journey equally, that there is no hierarchy. And I like that you said that. Not that one is afraid to have the responsibility, it's an honor to have that responsibility. But if a child feels that you're a responsibility, it seems like it's a burden. So I like to let them know that I'm here because it's an honor to know you and to work with you. And you are in charge. You're the change agent for your life, not me.
So you're setting the tone already for some exchange.
To let them feel that they are in fact in charge, even though they might not want it or feel it. It's important to know that. I think if we had known that as children, nobody told us that everybody else had the answers. And then you go to college and you think, I'm going to learn the answers here. Then you become a parent, you think you're going to learn the answers. Then you go to graduate school, you think, and then you realize as you're getting in your 30s, oh my gosh, it's all within me. And that's scary. But if we could teach children that it isn't that scary, that's the whole purpose, the interior castle within each of us is sacred, and to get them there, to the higher ground.
This
might be the
is
first time they've
Illinois.
heard that.
This is Illinois. This is Buck Pavoni. And I'm John Walker. And that's how we like to work at a sacred ground.
Yes.
The higher ground is a place where sacred, the sense of what the sacred is. And I think that's what's been missing.
I agree with you totally.
A key part of how I want to introduce myself to families and children that I work with. You know, there's a sense of an obligation of that you are so important is to be held as a being, a human being, a being that's sacred in this environment. And that's not the message that we've been listening to or hearing.
And I love that you said being, because I used to teach first grade and little kids used to say is human being. And it was interesting because the other day you said something that just really hit me in such a beautiful way. You said that people should not be sleeping in their own lives.
Yeah.
And it feels
We're not
like,
here to sleep.
No, we're here to participate and to feel and to get these children back in nature, you know, to find their bearings. And that's one of the things that I know we've talked about a lot, is the secret to unfolding the universe within yourself is to get out in the universe and not be behind artificial walls. You know, to put your feet in sand and soil and smell the plants and know how you put a seed in the ground and my goodness, 6 months later it comes up.
Yes.
It's a miracle. Still, to me, it's a miracle. I put the tulips in every year and I'm always shocked, like they're coming up. I haven't let go of that childishness. But so many children are, in our country right now, are denied that. And let me just say this, not just our country. I've got to say countries that are going through turmoil, particularly Syria right now, whose children aren't even allowed to go outside. And so we have to get back to a community of humankind, that we are brothers and sisters on this journey called life together. And I wish that we could let go of my country, right or wrong. I don't know if you ever heard Mel Brooks, the 2,000-year-old man, when they asked him, hey, did you have patriotism back in the caveman days? He goes, oh yeah, we had patriotism. And they said, what was it like? You can all go to hell except Cave 67. I was in Cave 67. And you know, it's just so funny. That came out probably 1960, but patriotism, as Eric Fromm said, is narcissism writ large. I feel like that was, there's nothing wrong with loving your country and being loyal to it, but I would love to see us love our brothers and sisters universally. That no one's ahead of anybody else, and no one's better because they're older or younger or whiter or darker or a gender. We're all equal partners on this living being journey.
Is it obtainable, this higher ground? Because you're speaking of words and actions that seem impossible to obtain.
But haven't you gotten there?
Oh, well,
Okay.
many times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you gotten there?
Feels like.
And I have sometimes.
Yeah.
And
I
you
want to
know,
hold on to it.
me
you know,
too.
You know, in the turbulence, as the stream seems to increase its volume.
And would you say that, and I don't know if, for myself, those times of the higher ground have been innumerably when I've been in the presence of a child. For me, my
Yeah.
own children particularly, and my beautiful grandchildren, but of course that predominantly, but the children I taught in first grade many years ago, the children that I've had the opportunity to work with, and sometimes the adults that you see the little kid in them, that's pure. That Life commercial, Mikey won't eat anything, and they show that the little child that's within everybody is what's pure. And I think as we try to evolve to the higher ground, we become more in touch with our innocence. Is that true?
The innocence, wasn't there a book called Innocence Lost or something?
Probably.
Yeah. So what I see with the kids that I'm working with, the families that I work with, is this sense of that everybody's guilty and that everybody's accusing each other of the same grim features of consciousness that they haven't come to terms with. And inside all of this is, where's the joy? You know, where's that switch of, yes, I agree to being happy, and learning how to maintain that. So speaking of goal, I set a daily goal. I want to be happy. I want a sense of joy about me. And there are times when I carry those grim features in my mind. I really want to lose it, lose the grim features, let them melt away. So through meditation, through that deep informative breath, relaxing that spine, taking care of the vagus nerve. Coincidentally, it's vagus. It's V-A-G-U-S nerve.
Wow.
What's your higher ground, Buck? Well, it's seems like it's a continual search. Start getting sense of getting to a higher ground, and yet still saying, in fact, that's what I was just thinking, listening to Stevie's words there of higher ground and highest ground, kind of mentioned in the song. So, I mean, obviously, it seems we would need to start working toward the higher ground. But to me, again, with, let's say, like goals, looking at a goal, this is what I want to accomplish. And as I'm doing that, whether I'm connecting it with, by doing that, I'm attaining a higher ground for myself. That's something that share with the youth, the families that work with, and trying to figure out, because you just mentioned something, John, because then we're going to talk about some approaches, perhaps, of, so how do I reach that goal? What is the goal, of course, and how do I reach that? So there's some different ways that, depending on what holds true for us, perhaps, and yet still trying to be objective, but it might be breathing, some real basic things, and meditating, which will incorporate the breathing, right? Art, music, lots of different ways to start. How do I start working toward that? And like you said, kind of discovering within oneself.
What did you call it? The castle?
The interior castle.
The interior castle.
Yeah,
How have you experienced that?
It's amazing. The kids, it's different being an educator, because I've been an educator for over 30 years as well, and being a mental health professional. The children that you work with often come with incredible trauma, and you can't be like idealistic the first time you meet them and say, we're going to do this, You meet them where they're at. You acknowledge their grief or their pain, and you let them know that this journey is going to be crooked. There's no straight path. but that I'm going to be there with you. And when I'm not here with you, I'll make sure there's the right person that will also follow you. I think Maya Pine wrote a great book in the early 90s, and she talked about children who had experienced trauma and did not become abusive themselves. And she likened it to all these people, the several people that she interviewed who were successful, had one adult in their lives. Sometimes it was just the mailman who just saw them every day. It was one boy and patted him on the head, and he would think, maybe someday I'll have a normal life. You know, he was being beaten every day by his dad, and there was no food in the house. His mother had died, and another woman who had been sexually abused by members of her family, and yet they had all become successful people. And each one of them said there was one adult. It wasn't necessarily a relative. It wasn't necessarily a doctor or a clinician or a teacher. It was one adult, and it could have been a minor thing. And she called that adult a polar star. And I believe with every ounce of my being, ever since I read that, and I wish I could coin that phrase as my own, but Maya Pine said that if you are an adult walking on the planet Earth today, and this was in the early 90s, you have an obligation to be a polar star to every child who crosses your path.
Have mercy. Isn't that true?
And I think
can
that's
feel
true,
that.
can't
Yeah,
you know?
I can see that.
And so, you know, the kids you see, like the other day I was walking down the street and there was a mother pushing her a little one in a carriage, and a little 4-year-old sobbing, and it was by the Y in Pawtucket, and I just stopped and I said, oh, what's the matter? And the mother was a sweet young mom, and she's like, oh, she didn't follow directions at school today. She's 4. And I said, it's okay sometimes. And it was just, she was looking at me like, are you crazy, lady? What are you talking to me? It's not okay. I feel like garbage, you know. And the mother stopped everything, and just because it was another adult, to let her know, hey, I've been a teacher for years. This is normal. If she paid attention all the time at age 5, you have problems.
Yes.
This is good. She has to learn the rules, but it's okay. It was Maya Pine who directed me to that. Instead of walking away, and it wasn't intrusive. It was just a needy moment. It was nothing. It took less than 3 minutes, and that was it. And she may never remember it, but hopefully the mother will. You know, not to. Sometimes the professionals deliver messages in ways that are not heard as they should be. A little child should not have to go home in tears. Not that I'm saying it's anybody's fault, but she needed to have validation that it's okay to be a little kid and not sit still during, you know, story time. You know, it's okay. I don't sit still during many of meetings.
Some of us have had trouble sitting still for any length of time.
True. And it's a sign of...
There's a medicine for that. Here, take this.
No, I don't want that. Good point. Want them to be children. So I think for me it's, you know, recognizing that they are individuals and that I have an obligation to honor that individuality, so that when I'm gone, that we spark that in each person that crosses our path. Some sense of duty and hope. Duty and hope.
So each day begins, and it sounds like whether you're saying it consciously or unconsciously, is I'm going to, in reaching that higher ground, share something, be that polar star for someone. And you did that day. So it's
Yeah,
like,
it was just a silly thing. Had nothing to do with my job. It's just what we should do. And I know you two do that all the time. I know we all do. And that's why
it's become reflexive.
Yeah.
It's kind of moving from the automaticity of a modern lifestyle of not really knowing what my unconscious is about. But now I'm reflecting on the moment in a way that I can respond that is appropriate to the moment, to that person, to the situation, and to just.
So being able to recognize that for yourself, do you share that with, and maybe not the same way, but in some way of, so the youth establishes a goal, talks about a goal, this is what I'd like to accomplish, and then here's maybe a way that you might be able to get to it, or what do you think? How can you get there? But kind of like what you were just talking about.
And that's fair, Buck. I resisted the CBT model, the cognitive behavioral piece, you know, therapy through thinking. But I've come to this place where if we're going to set goals, that it requires a thought.
I'm sorry. That's so great. It does, in fact, require a thought. Yes, sometimes there are strategies that are good to fall back on. And I can remember being a young woman teaching first grade and being so having this superimposition on following the lesson plan. And I remember it was in the winter, and we were doing a thing on seasons, and the little first graders were drawing pictures, and it was snowing outside, and I'm having them write. I'm like, what am I doing? Get your coats on. Let's go out and feel the snow. So, you know, you should be well aware of different strategical approaches to clinical work, different educational approaches, but you have to also have humanity. Like Dickens says, my business is humanity. You know, you have to know that you have to have a sense of love. I'm going to dare say it, love for those children. You can't say it to the kids, but you better have love for those children before you work with them, or you will be fried out really quickly.
Didn't you just say that a little while ago about getting in touch with your child, your inner child?
Yes.
So hopefully that allows you to.
Yes, yeah, and it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know, it does, and it's, you know, it doesn't come easily. But I think it's important to surround yourself, and these children need to be surrounded, and we've talked about this a lot, the academy, that the children need to be surrounded with positive role models who love them unconditionally, not just their parents, but other adults in the society. Not necessarily a clinician, not necessarily a teacher, but I feel that there has to be another venue that is daily, that is not driven by research-driven or what was achieved, but the achievement is within the dark victories of the soul that no one else sees but that child. And we want, I think as a society, particularly now, we're failing our children by not giving them that. There are no longer those extended families that, you know, Aunt Bertha used to live upstairs and drove you crazy, but she was there. There's nobody, you know, it's often single parents doing this very difficult job without supports.
Reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
Every single mother
Yeah.
having to reinvent the wheel.
And that's just so hard.
A little bit about the show, excuse me just for a sec, a little bit about the show of, you know, like talking to individuals in, let's say, at not so much at that level, but somewhere in here, because you're kind of talking about it right now, is bringing in family and community, right?
Yes.
So as the show progresses, hopefully we'll be able to do that too, is how else is that individual impacted, right? The immediate family, probably with us too, and we're trying to help with that at times, but just to kind of also where can we go with some of this? Maybe even having other guests from the community join us.
That's a great idea. It is a great idea.
To use the two words, mental health, in a public forum, I'm not hearing it often. In a modern society, perhaps you'll hear it on the Senate floor or the caucuses now and again, but the legislative bodies, there are not people, are not hearing the voice, unless, say, it's NAMI, the National Alliance for Mentally Ill, or FAMI, the Family Alliance for the Mentally Ill. These are people who are representing families and individuals who are struggling with mental health issues. But there are also, if we're going to allow ourselves this dialogue, a conversation between each other, and creating the roundtable, inviting other guests to sit here, the elders of other communities. There are indigenous healing models that work.
That's true.
And to share that, right? Because it might be something that, wow, I really liked what I just heard and what we just did, and I want to do that.
Family
Yes,
models, a full constellation. You know?
Yes, yes.
To be inspired.
So even as a community, talking about reaching its highest level, right, or higher level first. How can we promote that? And I think it does take place in those baby steps that we talk about. You know, we're not going to just leap right to the.
No.
But, so it's this idea. I think it's just exciting to share this time with you, of course, and then for us to be able to talk about this. But you know, kind of like where do we want to go to? You know, how important that is for us. So, any ideas? I mean, I know it was getting a little bit
something
away.
that was great about the mental health forum. I can't help but think today in the Providence Journal there was an article on Rhode Island could do more to prevent suicide. It was a doctor, and I'm so sorry, it was a great article, and one of the things that she wrote was that mental health is so not understood, that people say somebody's being bipolar or being crazy, and she likened it to, we don't say somebody's being cancer. or somebody's being emphysema.
Right.
There's no recognition that this is not a fault, and there's still a stigma attached to it.
Stigma, that's it.
There's still a stigma attached to having anxiety or depression. I can't believe it. Remember Thomas Eagleton, who was on McGovern's original ticket?
Yeah.
And he had
So
to,
sad.
yeah, he was knocked off because he had been,
Had
he'd been for
treatment.
counseling.
Or a high school student who wants to begin his first day as a freshman. But because of having a defined illness, it says, I can't go because everybody's going to know that I have this problem.
And I often tell particularly the teenagers that I've had the honor to work with who are depressed, and they'll say, oh, I'm just depressed. And I'll say, that's not a just. But I said, you know, you're a sensitive person, and I would think maybe there might be something wrong with you if you weren't depressed living in our current world. And that makes them feel better, because I'll tell them, yeah, I sometimes feel very anxious and very depressed societally, that I'm not always feeling safe or secure, and they feel immediate validation and recognition.
That's so important, isn't it?
Yeah, and so then they don't feel like there's something wrong with them.
And I'm all out here all by myself.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with
We're
them.
all in here by myself. Oh no.
Right.
And I believe in the next 100 years, it'll be a long time before we let go of that. But that's our job, is to make sure nobody has to feel stigmatized by having any diagnosis. Shouldn't. No one should have a stigma.
It's true in the Latino community. It's true in my community. I'm going to draw the race card. I'm going to apologize right now. But, you know, imagine that there are three Caucasians,
Yeah,
three
right.
white people sitting here
Yes.
saying, you know, like, we'd like to have this conversation, but we want a multicultural perspective too. And I demand.
I agree with you.
I demand this.
Please. Yeah.
And I don't know about YouTube. I do pretty much know, because I wouldn't be here if I didn't know that you felt the same way. Sometimes I feel embarrassed. That's maybe not fair, it's maybe too strong a term, for being Caucasian and having had opportunities that have been denied other people. I'm not ashamed, but I also recognize the fact that even though I was a single parent for many years and I struggled, that it wasn't the same struggle as my sisters who were Asian, African American, Latino. I mean, and that is not fair. And I believe that's still going on.
That's for sure.
So I want people to know that we recognize that we're Caucasian, and we share the collective responsibility of not giving everybody the opportunities that they deserve, regardless. Doesn't matter what your skin color is or your age. Again, we have to have a community of like souls.
And that's what hopefully we're going to be able to do right here as we kind of wrap things up, and opening so many doors that we're going to be able to pass through.
We are mental health professionals, and we want to share.
We do want the world to be better and filled with hope.
Yeah.
We cannot let go of hope. Agreed?
Absolutely. Yeah, then we're in big trouble if,
We have
if
to.
that four-letter word slips away.
That is the most important. For love is probably the most important.
Yeah.
And then hope.
Love, evolve. Love, evolve. Love, evolve.
That's awesome. That's so great. True.
You have to bring some instruments in one of these times too, and work this into
Could
the
work
discussion.
out, but you know, the brother here has a flute that's not played up in front of me yet. I've got to get to this.
It'll
I've got,
happen.
I've got my grandchildren's little xylophone. that's my talent musically.
I hear you. It's
Okay.
kind of like drawing in stick figures.
Definitely,
But,
definitely.
so, thank you very much. Any last words? We've got about a minute left.
I want to second Ellen's perspective that it's an honor to share something, you know, of this nature, and
Thank you both.
may we all journey inside of our own castles and get to know the different rooms and the different planes
wait.
of consciousness.
Looking forward to it.
And instead of running for psychic cover, as our terrain is peppered with fire, let us journey forth with illuminative hope and light, and not give up. Not give up.
And on that note, we'd like to thank you very much for tuning in, and thank you both.
I'll
very
come
much.
back now.
We will see you again next week. Thanks.